Hi everyone. I had a hard time trying to find a video on repairing wheel well rust on older Chevy Silverado 1500 or 2500 trucks out there. So I thought I'd go ahead and put one together and share my experience with you. So basically, instead of replacing the bed side panels like you see a lot of people doing, or doing some really shoddy work, doing some really backyard mechanic type work, I thought I'd give you a video on things that I determined, at least from an engineering perspective, of what I felt would be a permanent fix without spending close to, I don't know, $2,600 in parts and materials that have to come from GM itself. A lot of older parts on these older trucks have been sent out to third party. In other words, they released the technology out to third party so they could actually make those third party parts, and you can continue to buy parts for your old trucks. In this case, they know that they have a real problem with rusting in the wheel wells of their GM trucks. And it's my personal opinion that they have not released the product, the side panel products, to third party to start producing at lower costs because they want to make their money. So you have to buy these panels from GM themselves. I can't even get these from AC Delco. You got to go straight to GM, and they charge $1,200 on average for one side panel. So that's $2,400 for two panels, one left, one right. And you have to get the wheel well housing that actually sits inside the well that attaches to the side panel. So you're not just, because these two, the seams is what's rusting out of these things before it gets, all the way up into the main structure area. So it's not an inexpensive fix. So if your rust isn't so extensive, I mean to the point where it's structurally falling apart, I did this video to show you how you can do a repair without replacing the entire panel. And this would be what I consider a permanent fix. So I hope you enjoy it. If you have experiences that you can share, that's what this video is all about, is sharing ideas so that you have another avenue of repairing your truck without breaking the bank. Again, thank you for taking time for watching, and feel free to share this video out or to use it as a guideline on your own project. Okay, so to start with, you have to start preparing for your project. And for my project, I had to determine what kind of tools and materials I was going to use. So basically, I had to use, in order to make this job easier, you could do it without these tools, but I felt that since I had these tools, it was going to make my life a lot easier. So as far as tools are concerned, I had a standard 6-inch palm sander, pneumatic air palm sander. I also had a 175 pound Husky portable air compressor. I purchased a hand die grinder, which was definitely came in handy. I also bought 1/4 inch die grinder disc set that also had the paint and metal grinder, which is important. I bought a 3-inch metal cutting disc for the die grinder. I also purchased a 4.5 inch by 7/8 inch strip disc, grinding disc for my other grinder, which is made by DeWalt. Other materials that I bought the Bondo body patch, or I call it meshing, the Bondo body filler. I bought the kit that had the hardener in it. the Bondo fiber repair kit, which of course, you know, has the fiber cloth, the hardener, and everything else that you need. The mixing bowl is in there. I also bought the Bondo glass filler. I call that kitty fiber glass. It's a bunch of little soft fibers that's that are cut up and mixed into a nice Bondo goo, which you add the hardener to. That's used for the primary filler because you can't use body filler if your fill is more than 1/4 of an inch. If you do, the Bondo will start cracking. You won't get long-term results. I also bought the Bondo Professional Glazing and Spot Putty kit. What's interesting about this stuff is it's a 2-part mix as well with a hardener, but it produces a very nice, smooth glaze that slides over prepped surface to fill in micro bubbles that you might have after sanding it down. Any imperfections, this thing's going to take care of, and I found it very useful on this project. I also purchased window seal and door jamb expanding foam. Okay, I first started off with cutting out the useless parts in this project. So as you can see there, the wheel well seam from the side panel that is welded to the wheel well housing that extends all the way to the main bed frame. That seam has been rusted through, so I had to cut the totally useless rusted parts out. I used the 3-inch disc along with the die grinder, hand grinder, the pneumatic grinder to cut all that out. And then what I end up using for the flat surface of the bed panel itself was the larger hand grinder with the 4.5-inch grinding disc. Now both of these discs are designed to take down everything to the metal, the 2 different purposes. So the large grinder was used to grind the paint down to fresh metal. That way you can determine, you know, what parts are good metal versus, you know, the parts that's starting to rust, all the way to just complete rust through. What you see right here is what I attempted to surgically cut out as much as I could without completely giving up the scaffolding. So there was enough metal left there that I could build on top of to build the scaffolding. And what I will show you later on, I used the Bondo mesh or the Bondo patch to create the scaffolding that I was successful in using to reform the arch of the wheel well here. So I'll let you know what I did moving from here. But this is basically getting everything down to the bare bone minimums before moving on to the next step. Okay, the next step is to make sure that you treat the rust, the existing rust that we're using as the scaffolding, part of the scaffolding. That's still good material, and you can use it to rebuild your structure, and that's what enables us from having to go buy that expensive panels, panel replacements. So what I use is a true rust converter that the Navy uses. What it does is it changes the rust into another material that will not rust. It also primes it at the same time, and you know that the conversion actually took place when the rust turns into a very dark color, black color. So that's what I did here. So if you look at the picture, you'll see that the rust doesn't look like rust. It's all black. It's because I pre-treated it before I actually put the scaffolding up on there. Also notice that there's a gap between the inner wheel housing and the outer bed panel, and you'll see that here, with the red arrow. That gap we'll talk about later on. How do you handle that gap to give some structure and strength to this whole thing? And what I used was the expanding foam, which I mentioned earlier. After getting your scaffolding shaped, formed, and put in place, like you see here in this picture, the next thing you need to do is you need to add some structure to it, something that's going to hold that scaffolding in permanently. And so I decided to use the Bondo fiberglass materials to do that. So if you look on the inside of the wheel well, you'll see that the flange of my meshing that I created here sits right up against the inside wall of the side panel. This meshing has a sticky side to it, and what it will do is stick to the inner walls or a surface to keep it in place, at least temporarily. So what I ended up doing is I used the fiberglass Bondo solution and I fiberglassed over it. So what's really nice is because the holes inside of this mesh allows the adhesive material to go through. It not only holds this meshing up against the wall, but it also holds the new fiberglass on top of it and forms it into one solid piece. So what you see here is just the first layer that I put on. There's multiple layers that I end up doing. You go all the way around the inner well with this fiberglass, building up the arch and making sure that you build structure around this meshing. So you want to make this as hard or harder than the original metal that was on the vehicle. The vehicle had very thin sheet metal. As far as I'm concerned, that was the lowest quality here with these trucks. But we got to live with it, right? So I made sure that when I rebuilt the structure was equal to or better than what was there before. And so this fiberglass is extremely, extremely strong. I mean, it's the same stuff used on boat hulls out there. If it's good enough to handle that kind of beating, I assure you it's more than sufficient for this situation here. You'll see some pictures here where I started applying the fiberglass on there with at least beginning the first coat. Some of it's dry. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on that, but the bottom line is that I built structure on top of the mesh. Also, both the vertical and horizontal pieces of it on the inside. So that mesh had total structure and support, above it, on the side, and below it. So this is the way I did it before I even started concentrating on the outer part of this wheel well. In this next part, we're going to concentrate on the outer part of the wheel well. So as you can tell there in the upper left-hand corner of the wheel well, you'll see that I filled in the gap that we were talking about earlier. So that is the window and door frame expanding foam that helps give structure to what's damaged there. So your quality of fix is even better. Also, you're going to see that I've already started skimming some what I call, they call it Bondo glass. I call it kitty fiber because it's small little pieces of fiber glass that's ground up and put into a nice goo. But anyways, it's turned it's supposed to be a dark greenish color. I guess in this case it looks more brown. If you were to look at it closer, if you were to grind that down a bit, it'll look more green, dark green. But you notice how it's in there. It's being pushed tightly up against the mesh that I put in there. Again, you notice how the wheel well, the original wheel well shape is starting to take form again because I kept the scaffolding in there. I kept part of the structure in there and treated the rust to at least give me something to hang on to with that mesh that I put in there. So it's starting to take form. We're starting to build it up slowly but surely. I filled it in with the foam over there to the left, towards the middle, and towards the right. I started filling it in with Bondo glass, or the Bondo fiberglass. So that's going in there and starting to build some strength. Now, what I don't show you is, and I did not include in this, is the how can I say, sanded, the pre-sanded finish on this. I just simply forgot to take the picture. But so basically what I did is I started on the left-hand side where the foam is, and I ground that down with the small die grinder. And then I filled that in also with the fiber, the Bondo fiberglass. So the next layer above that was the Bondo fiberglass, going from left to all the way to the far right. And then I shaved that down with a small die grinder. You can do that. You can shave it down less than 1/4 of an inch below the outer bed side fender right there, or the side panel, about less than 1/4 of an inch. And what I did is I did that to prepare it for the standard Bondo that you put on top, to get it ready for sanding and then painting right after that. In this next section, what you're going to see is me. Well, you won't see me, but I was actually wearing a respirator to protect myself from all the fumes and dust. But I took a quick vid of the first coat of primer that I put on there. Is a primer and sealer prior to actual painting, and then of course finishing it up with clear coat. So I put 2 layers of primer, sealer, 2 base coats, and then 3 layers of clear coating. So here's the finished product. If you see these little lines right above here, this is when Mako did their paint job over 5 years ago. This is how great of a job these guys did. They didn't even remove the plastic wheel well extender, and they didn't even tape it. And so of course that's paint buildup. And you notice this here is a different white color. It's because Mako didn't use the correct color match for the truck. So there's no way I can match up the color. I don't know what the paint number is on that. So I picked a random color to make this repair here. So you can see I did a pretty good job on this. I'm happy with this. And you'll see that it's pretty straight all the way down. That wasn't easy to do. Now, could it be smoother? Yes. But I plan to paint this truck down the road. And painting the truck means I have to actually scratch all the surface here in order for the paint to stick properly. So there's a paint booth in Orlando I plan to use. But as of right now, this job is good. I'll put the plastic extension back over. You can see the plastic extension down there, and that'll go right back on here.